you know, the members of the armed forces are incredibly efficient and brave and trained for what they do. And a lot of the military are trained firefighters, especially when you get into the
look at that, Miami.
The engines.
Look at that billowing smoke.
But there are requirements for training specific to wildland firefighting that every firefighter is required to go through. And when you bring in and mobilize a military, say an infantry battalion, to be the foot soldiers in the fire suppression effort, they need to take that same minimum 40-hour training class before we can deploy them as that.
Right, and it's the red card certification. If you get those red card certified, they use some instructional support. I was a firefighter in the Air Force.
I know a lot of people see the resources around the community with the active duty Air Force and the active duty Army. There are federal laws that prevent local government from just calling up and having it come in. There's a federal law that prevents that from happening. So what you have to do is go through a process of exhaustion, I guess I could say, where you begin exhausting resources and you take steps, almost like a checklist, to reach the level to where our federal government, who is overseeing all national resources, including the Department of Homeland Security, in constant contact with Northern Command, which is based right here.
That whole hill is on fire.
Those orders, after identifying that the local resources, the state resources, the national, federal forestry resources are exhausted, and at that time, the Northern Command can make the request on behalf of the Department of Homeland Security to deploy military resources. It's not something, it is not possible to pick up the phone and say, send me 2,000 soldiers, whether they have a card or not. It has to be coordinated. The military has commitments, and we see them going off to war and returning every year, so they would have to build that in. I don't want to build the false sense of belief that myself or even the governor can call up and say, give me 2,000 troops off Carson that carry a red card. That doesn't work. And it wouldn't be fair to those soldiers to pull them off their duties, or having just been come back and being directed around in a field that just because they carry a card doesn't mean that they're already embedded into the structure. It's a process we go through. Matter of fact, I'll back up 2 days. Signing that declaration disaster that Commissioner Lathan signed and that the mayor signed, that was one step of exhaustion toward moving there. Bringing the state in was another step toward moving there. Signing over the delegation of authority to the Type 1 management team is another step to get there. It's not an individual phone call thing. There are very specific laws that empower the Department of Defense to bring ground troops in for something like this. They will use soldiers, but that's when it's almost at a point where there are no resources available. You can't bring them in from outside. Mutual aid has been exhausted, and only then there is a delay in time where they're activated. All of the steps that have to be accomplished toward doing that are being checked off the list right now. And it's a process and a system that takes the nation's entire requirements into consideration.
Okay, question right here.
I heard you said that you couldn't give us an exact number of how many multiple structures have been impacted, but can you give us an estimate? And can you also tell us how many other structures are in jeopardy?
Please,
you know what, Daniel? I'm telling you, this was so fast. And look at it now. Look at the conditions right now. This was such a fast-acting firestorm, literally, that we had multiple reports of numerous structures on fire. At one point, over the radio, one of our commanders said, we're going to make a stand at Flying W Ranch. That's where we're going to make a stand. The reports coming in to the command center were many structures on fire. A lot of them were partially on fire, and that's where we talked about triaging. A lot of those structures were knocked down. They were put out. Those fires were put out, and they saved those. I am just not willing to do that right now because we're not out of this. It's not even close to being over. To go back to the comment earlier, one of the requests earlier from one of our commanders on scene was, I need 50 engines. 50, 5-0, and we've already got many apparatus and firefighters just over the hill here fighting this fire. We need 50 more. That doesn't happen like the sheriff's talking about. That doesn't happen like in a snap. They've got to be trained, and they're on their way, because, again, this is going to be a long campaign like we've talked about earlier. So I just don't want to comment on how many. Do I have an idea? Yes, I do. But I'm not going to comment on it. I'm not going to comment on it because we're still in the middle of this, deeply involved in it.
Okay, I've got a question. Excuse me. Right here.
Big explosion on that house.
Okay, sir in the white shirt.
To be a fire chief.
Yes, sir.
Within the incorporated area of Colorado Springs, who's calling the shots? Is it the Fed? Is it the mayor? Because I was told by a member of the mayor's staff in communication that the feds are running the entire show. If you arbitrarily need, let's say, X amount of additional fire trucks, and you want them, say, out of Denver or Pueblo, do you have the autonomy to call them up yourself or actually requesting, or do you have to defer to the feds? Who's running the show here?
Here's the deal.
In charge.
I understand you're upset, sir. Here's the deal. Like we talked about, Saturday night about 9:30, we signed a delegation of authority with the county to allow a Type 1 team to come in and be the management team of this with all the resources that come with it. That being said, this fire from Saturday, Sunday, and Monday was in the county. It bordered the city the entire time. Let me finish, sir. The entire time, we're embedded with our brothers and sisters over here to fight this thing. What happened is when it quickly, and I mean quickly, came into the city, we, in concert with Rich and the sheriff and the police chief, we said, listen, we're going to call everything we can from our neighbors to the south and north to get here. They're coming, they're here, they're probably already in the fight as we speak. So it's a joint decision. They clearly understand that because now it is in the city. It's a joint issue, though. But the legality of the signing the delegation, I don't want to make that an issue. The issue is we're doing this together. We're not fighting over and saying who's calling the shots. We're doing it together. And I want that to be clear. This is together we're working on this. I mean, we talk in the command center and say, okay, we're going to call for this. Okay, you got that? We'll do this. It's working together. I assure you.